Welcome to my channel. Today we will study Control and Coordination, which is NCERT Class 10 Science, Chapter number 7. So let's begin. In case of plants, there is only chemical control. So different processes in plants such as growth, movement, etc. are all controlled chemically. Whereas in case of animals, we have two types of control, nervous control and hormonal control. The nervous control is carried out by the nervous system, and the hormonal control, which is also called as chemical control, because all hormones are chemical in nature. So hormonal or chemical control is carried out by the endocrine system. First, plants we will study later. First, we will begin with animals' nervous control. So, who controls the nervous control of the animals is performed by this kind of a thing. What is this? This is a nerve cell. Just like you have studied earlier in your classes, you have studied about cell. What is a cell? So cell is inside a cell you have a nucleus and cytoplasm. So similarly, this is a nerve cell. A nerve cell is different from the other cells in the body. In that, in a nerve cell, you have this kind of structures. So let's begin with one by one. So at first, we have the cell body, and inside the cell body here is the nucleus, and from the cell body different finger projections, these projections, tree like projections, you can say branches. These branches comes out of the cell body. These branches are known as dendrite, and they receive the nerve signal. Okay, some receptors are there, and this is called as the axon. This whole thing from here to here, this thing is called as the axon, and the axon is covered by myelin sheaths, and at the end of the cell this thing is known as the nerve ending. So if you see this diagram, from this portion what type of question comes? At first you will be asked, draw the structure of a neuron and explain its function. So at first you draw the structure, and then to explain its function, let's start from understanding this diagram. This is a muscle fiber, okay, and inside this muscle fibers there are different cells, and this is the axon. Okay, half of the diagram is shown. That side is the cell body and that side is dendrite, and so this is the axon, and these are the nerve endings. So the nerve endings are uh, placed above the muscle fiber. So what happens whenever at first whenever this dendrites comes in contact with any signal, it relays the signal to the cell body, and then from the cell body the signal is transferred through the axon up to the nerve ending. So till here, from here to here, the signal is an electrical signal. So the nerve impulse is an electrical signal. So till here, till the nerve ending, it is an electrical signal. Okay. After the electrical signal reaches the nerve ending, then this electrical signal is converted into a chemical signal, or you can say that um, some chemicals are released whenever an electrical signal reaches the nerve ending. The electrical impulse releases some chemicals, and these chemicals then crosses this gap. That means between two axons, see, this is one nerve cell and this is another nerve cell. So between two nerve cell, if you can see, between two nerve cell, this is one nerve cell and this is another nerve cell, and in between these two nerve cell there is a gap. Okay, so that gap you cannot see it here because the gap is very small actually, so it is zoomed in here. So this is the nerve ending of this nerve cell. This portion is this. So this is nerve ending, and here you can see that the electrical signal was coming from this side, okay, the impulse, and as soon as it reaches the nerve ending, some chemicals are released, and that chemicals are then released, and then those chemicals are transferred to the other nerve cell, and then again it is received by the receptors present in the dendrites of the other nerve cell, and similarly one more electrical impulse will be created and the cycle continues. So first one electrical impulse carried out till here it is electrical impulse only, then the electrical impulse changes into a chemical, and that chemical is then received by the receptors of the other nerve cell, again it is converted into an electrical impulse, and then electrical impulse is again carried. So totally continuously this thing is going on. But here one very important question comes, that what is the gap called between the two nerve cell? So that gap is called as the synapse. Synapse is the gap between two nerve cells from in where the chemical messengers are transferred. So in this way, our so here also see this is the chemical messengers. These chemicals are released at the end of the nerve cell, and then is the muscle fibers then reacts to these receptors. So in this way, our nerve cell works. So next, what it is written, the nervous tissue. The nervous tissue, therefore, will be what? It will be a collection of this type of nerve cell. Yes. So here it is asked that identify the parts of a neuron where information is acquired. So where the information will be acquired, at the dendritic portion of the nerve cell, right? Then next question is, through which information travels as an electrical impulse? Of course, through the axon part, and where this impulse must be converted into a chemical signal for onward transmission at the nerve ending. Clear? Next, let us continue. So next topic is reflex actions. Okay, it's very interesting. So just for example, whenever a mosquito bites you, what do you do? Do you think this mosquito is biting? What should I do? Or do you think like that? Oh, mosquito bites or someone attacks you. Okay, some tiger attacks you, or some thief attacks you. What do you do? What will you do? Just think. Will you keep thinking? You will just act without thinking. Whenever you touch anything hot, very hot, you just pull back your hand. Why do you pull it back? What are these things happening that without thinking you are doing these things? Why are you doing? So these kind of reactions that we do, these are called as reflexes. Reflexes means you do not think before you do it. You just do it automatically. So that is called as a reflex. Okay? So how these reflex actions travel in our body, that we'll study next. So this is a reflex arc. Okay? So what is a reflex arc? Let's study that. So what is this? This is a pan containing hot water, and this hand is touching it, and as soon as it feels that it is hot, it removes its hand. So what are the things going on inside the body? Let's start that. So when this hand touches the hot pan, immediately the nerve endings present here in our hands muscles, so that nerve endings, or the dendrites receptors, the receptors receive the signal, and the signal is passed to the spinal cord. Okay, so this signal which senses this neuron which senses the uh, signal, that neuron is known as the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron senses the signal, and and then it comes till the spinal cord. Now in the spinal cord it relays the signal to the relay neuron, and the relay neuron does what? It, as soon as the relay neuron gets the signal from the sensory neuron, the relay neuron passes the signal to the motor neuron, and the motor neuron then immediately tells the muscle cells that remove your hand. So this thing is happening so fast that we immediately remove our hands. So just imagine how fast this thing is happening. So uh, one more thing, whenever this sensory neuron sends the signal to the spinal cord, at the same time it also sends the signal to the brain. Okay, so the brain actually has no function during a reflex action. It is just aware that yes, something has happened, but the main function is done by the spinal cord. The spinal cord actually protects us from this kind of uh, things. Whenever we do the reflex action, our spinal cord is responsible for it. The brain is just aware of the fact that we have done some reflexes. That's it. So this pathway is known as the reflex arc. So this is the nerve path. This is the nerve path involved in the reflex action, and this kind of a nerve path which is involved in reflex action is called as a reflex arc. Okay. Our next topic is human brain. So human brain is the main coordinating center of the body. The brain, the human brain, this is the human brain you see, and the human brain and the spinal cord. This is the spinal cord which is inside the vertebral column. So the human brain and the spinal cord together they form the central nervous system of the body. So they receive information from all the other parts of the body. So all the nerve endings from all the different parts of the body are actually assembled at the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord the messages are sent to the brain with the help of through the medulla oblongata, and in this way we have the central nervous system working. Now uh, the brain, from this part the question that comes are what are the different parts of a brain, or draw the structure of a brain. So at first let us see how the brain looks from inside. So the brain is actually divided into three parts: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. What is the forebrain? This part, the front part, is known as the forebrain. The middle portion is known as the midbrain, and the back portion is known as the hindbrain. So so this is actually the side view. The front view, if you say, this is the front view, and this portion is known as the front brain. At the back, there will be the hindbrain, and at the center will be the midbrain. Now, the forebrain is divided into many parts. The first and the largest part is known as the cerebrum, and the other smaller parts are such as hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and olfactory lobes, which may be present somewhere here. Olfactory lobes are those lobes which receives the olfactory receptors concerned with the sense of smell. The cerebrum, which is the largest part of the forebrain, is divided into two cerebral hemispheres. So this is the front view, this is the side view. So the whole thing is known as the cerebrum, and it is divided into two cerebral hemispheres, left and right. The forebrain is the main thinking part. Whenever you think something, then your forebrain becomes active. So it is the main thinking part and the largest part, because it is the largest, as you see from the diagram. and it consists of two cerebral hemispheres. Okay, then you have the midbrain. The midbrain actually connects this forebrain and the hindbrain. This is the hindbrain. So the midbrain connects the forebrain and hindbrain. And what are these functions? The function of the midbrain is that it controls the reflexes. It controls the reflexes involving the eyes and ears. So when you blink your eye, who is controlling it? It is controlled by the midbrain. Then moving on to the hindbrain. The hindbrain consists of three parts. The first part is known as the cerebellum. Okay, this cerebellum, it controls the muscular movements when you lift your hand or when you lift your leg. The muscular movements are controlled by the cerebellum part, and it also controls the body posture, how you sit, how you stand, and as well as the equilibrium. So the cerebellum has very important functions. Functions are what? The muscular movements, the body posture, and equilibrium. Then we have a small part here which is called as the pons. It is actually a bridge which carries the sensory and motor neuron between the brain and the spinal cord. And the final part is known as this is the final part, this is the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata controls all involuntary actions like the beating of the heartbeat, respiration, all these salivation. Whenever you see something very tasty, automatically your mouth waters. That is, salivas are released inside your mouth. So who controls that release of saliva? The medulla oblongata. Okay, so the hindbrain has three parts: the cerebellum, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. So the pons is a bridge, and it carries all the sensory and the motor neuron between the brain and the spinal cord. Cord actually is the extension of the medulla oblongata, and this spinal cord then extends into the our vertebral column. So it is a tubular or cylindrical structure. It extends downwards the medulla oblongata. So here you can see this picture. This is the medulla oblongata, and then the spinal cord extends down from the medulla oblongata up to the here. It extends down, and it is surrounded by what? It is protected by the vertebral column. Okay, yeah. One more thing, very important. I forgot that this brain must be protected, right? You do not see like this inside you have you have the you have a protection or protective covering over your brain. Otherwise, if you get hit by something, you will die. So what are the protective covering? So the brain is protected actually by a cranium, which is the skull. See, it's written, the cranium is the skull which protects the brain from any external injury. The cranium is covered by three membranes. Okay, there are three membranes here, and the spaces between these membranes are called as meninges. And within this membranes there is a cerebrospinal fluid. If you see this disc diagram, see within the membranes there are cerebrospinal fluid. So this fluid actually performs a very important function of function. So its function is to absorb any shock from outside to protect the brain. So first protection is given by the skull so that it is not getting injured from outside, and the second protection is also protection is given by the cerebrospinal fluid, becoming since it is a fluid, so it can absorb the shock from outside. So that's it. Then these are the things that I have already mentioned about, like involuntary actions are controlled by the medulla oblongata. So these are important. Then how are the tissues protected? Just like I said it, that it is protect the cerebrospinal fluid. This cerebrospinal fluid protects the brain from any shock, and the spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column. Okay, then let's discuss the questions. So what is the difference between a reflex action and walking? So difference between reflex action and walking is that reflex actions are done without any thinking, right? It is quick. Walking is, of course, it is not like reflex action. We think before we walk, right? So reflex actions are controlled by whom? It is controlled by the spinal cord. And walking is controlled by whom? It is controlled by the hindbrain, cerebellum. Cerebellum controls voluntary action. So reflex actions are controlled by the spinal cord, and walking is controlled by the cerebellum. Okay. Next, what happens at the synapse between two neurons? So between at the synapse, what happens? First of all, what was synapse? Synapse is a gap between the two nerve endings. Yes, and at that gap, the electrical impulses were passed on to the another nerve with the in the form of what? In the form of chemicals. So synapse actually is the place where electrical impulses are transferred from one nerve to the other nerve in the form of chemical messengers. Then which part of the brain maintains posture and equilibrium? Just now I said cerebellum, the hindbrain's portion cerebellum. And how do we detect the smell of an agarbatti? Of course, by the olfactory receptors present in the olfactory lobes, which is located in the forebrain. Then what is the role of the brain in reflex action? So, yeah. So, what is the role of brain in reflex action? So, as we have already discussed, the reflex action in reflex action, the sensory neuron uh, transfers the signal to the spinal cord, and one more signal is transferred to the brain, but brain does not give the receiving signal, right? The motor neuron is originating from the spinal cord. Look at the diagram. Let's look at the diagram once again. Yeah, so here the sensory neuron carries the signal from the receptors, and then it relays onto the relay neuron present in the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord the motor neuron comes. So we don't have any connection with the brain. The motor neuron do not have any connection, or the brain doesn't send any signal to the motor neuron. The signal that is sent to the motor neuron is only from spinal cord. Okay, so the brain is just aware of the fact that something has happened. The hand got touched by a heating thing. So it is by a hot thing. So that is the thing that is happening here. Brain has in reality, brain has no function in reflex actions, but brain is aware of the fact that something has happened just now. That our reflex action has been carried out by the person, by the body. So uh, so yeah, so if the sensory neuron had instead of giving the message to the relay neuron present in the spinal cord, if it would have given the message to brain, then it would have taken a long time to relay the um, message to the motor neuron. Until then the hand would have gone burnt. So just to save himself from these damages, the human body has evolved itself, and instead of taking such a long journey till the brain, the nerve has started to form bundles in the spinal cord, so that the nerves, uh, instead of going to the brain, can just relay the message to the relay neuron present in the spinal cord and to the motor neuron, then finally saving himself. So this is an evolution thing So the answer is that brain doesn't have any function. It's just aware of the fact that yes, something has happened. The information just goes to the brain. The input is all in the input is only going to the brain. There is no function here. The brain has no role to play in case of a reflex action. That's all. Then any questions left? Let's check. Yeah. Then coordination in plans we will study in the next. Then next move on to the next part, hormonal control in animals. As I have already mentioned that animals have two types of control. One is the nervous control and the other is hormonal or chemical control. Now the hormones are actually chemicals, so these are also called as chemical control. Now first question is that where do these hormones originate? Who secretes these hormones? Okay, so and why do we have hormonal control at the first place? There is nervous control in our body, so can't they do the other functions that hormonal control carries out? Why do we need hormonal control when we have a nervous control? So very important question, and the answer is that nervous control cannot carry out all functions. Like the nervous control, in nervous control, the nerves are not reaching each and every cells of the body, okay? But hormonal, that is chemical, these reach each and every cells of the body. Because these are chemicals, these are released in blood, and the blood then reaches each and every cells of the body. So that is why hormonal controls actually reach and are very important because they reach each and every cells of the body, okay? And as you have already seen in that diagram where the muscles, the nerve was sitting on that muscle only and not entering into the cells where it is. Yeah, so the nerve was sitting on the just on the muscle fiber and it is not entering the cells. So in case of hormonal control, the hormones are reaching each and every cells of the body. So that is why hormonal control is very good. Another important thing which is written in our NCERT books is a very important point written in our NCERT books is that just like plants, just imagine when you cut a plant, a branch of a tree, what do you see? The leaves, the branches. When you cut one branch, three, four branches starts from the same point, right? And the leaf starts growing here and there, wherever you want, wherever you see. The plants has leaves everywhere in that tree. The tree has leaves everywhere. But in case of humans, we do not have such kind of a thing. We are so beautifully designed by the God or whatever you say. So you see that each and every finger of both of our hands, if you see the both the thumbs in both of our hands are identical. The index fingers are identical. Both our ears are identical. Okay, both our eyes are identical. So if uh, it happens so that finger starts growing on our face, how will it look? How won't it be scary? And who controls them? Who is relaying the messages that this thumb has grown up to this much length, so the thumb of the right hand should also grow up to that much length only? Okay, who is transferring the messages from the left hand to the right hand? So these are all done by hormones. The hormones actually directs both the thumb cell or both the hand cell, you can say, that grow up to this much of uh, length only. So that is how hormones work. They enter each and every cell of the body. Okay, that is a difference. Then where are the hormones present? So the hormones are actually present in the different glands that are present in our body. There are different glands in our body which secretes different hormones, and these different glands have different functions, or you can say that different glands have different hormones which have different functions. So let's begin with the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland is present where? It is present in the brain. Okay, so the pituitary gland is present in the brain, and what is the hormone secreted by the pituitary gland? The hormone secreted by the pituitary gland is the growth hormone. Okay, so the growth hormone, what does it do? It makes our bones of the legs long. Okay, long bones and muscles. So it promotes growth of the body actually. So if you see a person which is very huge and tall, you can say that that person has a very good secretion of growth hormone, and that is done by pituitary gland. And if you see some person who is dwarf, why is it dwarf? You can say that yes, your growth hormone, that is the pituitary gland's hormone, is not enough for the growth, so you must have more of that pituitary gland's hormone. So that is how you can say that. You don't say that, that is how you can understand that. Okay, then you have pineal gland, it also lies in the brain. Okay, and then hypothalamus is also a very important uh, area of the brain. Next we have the thyroid gland. Okay, the thyroid gland is a butterfly shaped gland, as you can see in your image. See, look at the thyroid gland, it is a butterfly shaped gland. Okay, and what is the function of this thyroid gland? The function of this thyroid gland is to release the hormone thyroxine. Thyroxine is the hormone, and what does it do? The thyroxine hormone actually contains iodine, and that iodine is essential for our body. And if you do not have enough iodine in your body will start showing symptom, and one of the symptom is goiter. What is it? Goiter means swelling neck. So you have seen some uh, you have seen some ads, right? TV ads, that iodine yukt namak. Why do you say that? Why do we buy salts containing iodine? Because iodine is essential, because it prevents us from goiter. So that is the thing. Lack of iodine causes goiter, and this thyroid gland contains this thyroxine hormone, which releases iodine into our blood. Another functions of thyroxine is that it also metabolizes carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So it also helps in the metabolism of the body. And then the next hormone that comes important is the adrenal hormone. Okay, adrenal hormone, or you can say this adrenaline. Adrenaline is the hormone secreted by the adrenal glands. And where is it present? It is present in the kidneys. At the top of the kidneys, above the kidneys, there are two glands which are known as the adrenal glands, and these two glands secrete the hormone adrenaline. Now, what is an adrenaline hormone? When is it secreted? So whenever you are in times of stress or in times of excitement, then this adrenaline hormone is secreted. And what are the results of the secretion of adrenaline hormone? It increases your heartbeat. That is why you can feel that when you are excited, your heartbeat gets faster, your respiration starts faster. Why is it happening? Because when you get excited, your adrenaline hormones get secreted, as a result of which your heartbeat and respiration becomes faster, and your blood pressure also becomes high. So that is the reason. So it is also known as an emergency hormone or flight hormone, because of that reason, that whenever you are in an emergency, like if someone is in a very difficult situation, like accident or something like that, emergency, you are going to miss a flight, you are late, then your adrenaline hormones get secreted. Okay, Then next we the next hormone is the insulin hormone, which is secreted by the pancreas. The pancreas are, you know where it is located? It's located in behind the stomach, you can say, and it secretes the hormone insulin. Now, what is the function? So, actually, whenever there is a rise in blood glucose in our bloodstream, no, then a sudden rise in blood glucose is not good for our body. So, insulin checks the rise in blood glucose. If there is a rise, insulin, what it does, it it just decreases the blood glucose level. So that is why we are healthy, because if the blood glucose level rises, then we will have diabetes, and that is the reason that people with diabetes are given insulin injection, because their insulin hormone is not there, you know. uh, the insulin is a hormone which protects us from diabetes, and when that insulin hormone is not secreted enough by the pancreas, or there is a shortage of insulin hormone in our body, then the blood glucose level is not checked, and it keeps on rising, and that blood glucose, because of the rising blood glucose, the person gets diabetes. And how to control that diabetes? The control is that you have to give him injections of insulin, so that the insulin again decreases the blood glucose. That is why it is so important that your endocrine glands and these all these glands works perfectly, otherwise we will have various diseases. Okay, like sometimes what happens, overproduction of hormones are also related with some diseases. Okay, so hormones must be controlled, must be secreted in a controlled manner. Overproduction or underproduction, both are very bad for our body. Just like example you take of thyroid gland. Okay, thyroid gland secretes thyroxine hormone, but if there is an overproduction, then you will have a type of disease like hyperthyroidism, where your metabolism is very high, and if you get um, uh, if your thyroid gland is producing less amount of thyroxine hormone, then you'll get hypothyroidism. So different kinds of diseases then will start showing off. That's all in today's video, and these are the questions. How does chemical coordination takes place in animals? What is the use of iodized salt? And mm, so first questions answer, let's how chemical coordination, you just know that how it is the hormonal coordination. Okay, you have to write about endocrine glands and how they are secreted directly into the blood, and then how these different types of organs, different types of glands uh, does functions like insulin. He gives examples of some glands like insulin. Okay, that is the thing. Then you have to, then why is the use of iodine salt advisable? Obviously for the prevention of goiter, so that iodine is necessary actually for the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. So without iodine, and the thyroid gland will not be able to make thyroxine hormone. So, and thyroxine is again responsible for metabolic for the metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. So that is why it is important to take iodized salt. Then how does the body respond when adrenaline is secreted in the blood? That I have already mentioned. Your heart beats faster, respiration faster, blood pressure is high, etc. And why some patients of diabetes treated by giving injection of insulin? Just now I have discussed about it. That's all in our today's video. Thank you so much. And the medulla oblongata, it controls all the involuntary actions. Now then comes the spinal cord. Okay, that's the spinal cerebral hemispheres, which is separated by a deep fissure.